Scott?
Hey, we need to, before we go live, we need to do a sound test or something, because I have JJB muted on here. I can't hear him. So it's on your end.
Ready? Welcome to, I want to welcome you to a Google Hangout with Justice Jeff Brown. Justice Brown is one of the 9 members of the Supreme Court and a candidate for re-election on the general election ballot this November 2014. My name is Scott Brister. I'm a former justice on the Supreme Court as well, and a colleague for many years with Justice Brown. I want to thank you for joining us. After today's Hangout, these video and responses will be posted on Justice Brown's website, www.justicejeffbrown.com. So you can, if you like what you see, you can refer that to other people, friends and family members. This race is one that every voter in Texas will be voting on in November. So if you hear a complaint from somebody, well, I don't know the candidates very well, you can point them to this Google Hangout recording, and so they can find out and get to know Justice Brown a little better. I want to introduce Justice Brown to you. He was, for 6 years, a judge in Houston, downtown Houston, on Civil District Court, State District Court there. After that, he was 6 years on the Court of Appeals and 14th Court of Appeals in Houston. And then in 2013, about a year ago, he was appointed by Governor Rick Perry to be on the Texas Supreme Court and is running for re-election, as I said. So I'm going to turn it over at this point to Justice Jeff Brown to tell you a little bit more about himself and about his campaign for re-election. Judge Brown.
Well, thank you, Judge Brister. I really appreciate you participating in the Hangout today, and I appreciate everyone else tuning in to the Hangout too. This is a great. Texas is a huge state, and it's hard to get around and see everybody. And so vehicles like this are a good way for a campaign like mine to connect with the voters and let folks know what this race is about and what my candidacy is about. And so I'm delighted to have this chance to visit with y'all. As Judge Brister said, I've been on the court for about a year now. Last year, Chief Justice Wallace Jefferson, who had served on the court for many years, stepped down to return to private practice. Governor Perry appointed Nathan Hecht, who had been on the court for a long time, the longest serving judge on the court, to take over as Chief Justice. That emptied Justice Hecht's spot, and the governor appointed me to Judge Hecht's spot. It was the 3rd appointment I've gotten from Governor Perry. He appointed me to my previous positions on the Court of Appeals and on the District Court before that. And the fact that he appointed me might be confusing to some folks because we elect our judges here. That's what this Hangout is all about. I'm up for election right now. But in Texas, when there's a vacancy on a court, the governor appoints to fill that vacancy, but then the appointee has to run to keep the seat. And sometimes gets opposed in the election, like I am. I have an opponent from the other party in this race, and it's going to be up to the people of Texas, to the voters of Texas, to decide who gets to occupy this seat for the next 4 years. And as Judge Brister said, I'm from Houston. At least most recently, I spent 20 years living in Houston as a lawyer and as a judge and as a law student before that. But I was born and raised in Dallas, or in the Dallas area. Born in Dallas, raised in Garland. My dad was a Dallas police officer, and for 35 years he was a Dallas police officer. So my 2 younger brothers and I grew up in a home where respect for the law was very important. It was a daily reality for us, and I think that respect for the law sunk in pretty deeply with me and led me to go to law school and led me to become a judge. And I feel called to this position, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity that the voters and Governor Perry have given me to do this job, which I find very rewarding, and it's very important in the lives of very important in the daily lives of folks across Texas.
Tell us some about what it's like a day in the life of a Texas Supreme Court judge. Where's your office? Where do you go? Who's there? What do you do when you get there?
Well, a lot of folks expect that we're in the courtroom every day, and at the trial level, judges are in the courtroom just about every day, dealing with cases that are coming before them, convening juries and trying cases and hearing motions by attorneys and litigants. In the appellate courts, and the Supreme Court is an appellate court, a court that hears appeals. It's a little different. A lot of our work is done back behind the scenes, back in our offices, because while we hear appeals in the courtroom, lawyers and other litigants come and argue cases to us. Most of the work that we do is more academic work. It's work that we do reading and researching the record that was developed in the cases before they came to the Court of Appeals, to the Supreme Court. It's reading the briefs, the arguments, the cases that the lawyers are using to argue their case, the precedents that have been laid down that we must follow under our common law system. So a day in the life of a Supreme Court justice might be, if we're hearing arguments that day, it might be I show up and we go into the courtroom and we hear cases and we ask questions of the lawyers to try and figure out who's got the better end of the argument. If it's not an argument day, it might be a conference day, and there's a conference room at the Supreme Court here in Austin where the 9 of us sit around a table and talk about the cases that we've heard, talk about the cases that we're thinking about taking on, and we hash out the arguments that the parties have made to us and try to come to a consensus on what the right result in that case is, the right result that the law compels. But more often than conference days or argument days, they're just days of a lot of reading and writing. It's a very academic job. It's a very it's a job where I've got to do a lot of research of the law to figure out what the right answer in a case is. It's a job where I've got to do a lot of writing. The Supreme Court hands down a written opinion in every decision that it makes. As you know well, Judge Brister, having served on the court for so long. And that's an important part of our job, because we are, at the trial court level, the trial judge doesn't have much time to say things other than sustained or overruled or granted or denied, because he or she has got to get the case down the road. We have more time to mull over the questions at the appellate level, and we do, and then we write down the reasoning that we have used to reach the decision that we've made, so that we're held accountable by the public and by the lawyers and litigants who have brought the case to us. So if you don't like to read and write and study, then a job on the Supreme Court is probably not the job for you. I get a lot of help in that in the job that I do. I've got 3 lawyers who work for me. One is a staff attorney who is a permanent employee of the court, and he works for me and helps me to get my reading and writing accomplished, my research done. And then every year we have 2 law clerks per judge who come in. Those law clerks are first-year lawyers. They are fresh out of law school, and they come and work for the court for a year, helping as research assistants and helping us to prepare our opinions and handle the work of the court.
A lot of people tuning in may not know much about the Texas Supreme Court. For one thing, it's older than the state of Texas, because the Texas Supreme Court began meeting before Texas was a state. It was a republic. And then it has 9 members on it, which is like the U.S. Supreme Court, but only 2 other states have 9 members on their state high court. What's it like around the conference table with 9 different people? Tell us some about what the conversations or arguments are like.
Well, you know, when I was on the trial bench, I only had to convince myself that I was right when I had to make a decision, and that was hard enough sometimes to just convince myself. When I was on the Court of Appeals, we heard cases in panels of 3. 3 judges would hear each case, and then I just had to convince one other person that I was right if I wanted to carry the day. 9 judges is a completely different ballgame. And it's 9 strong personalities. It's 9 very smart people, all of whom have the best interests of the state of Texas and the rule of law at heart. Just because we all have those same interests at heart, though, does not mean that we all see cases in the same way. The law might lead one of us in one direction and one of us in the other direction. And that's what that conference table is for. It's for us to sit down and reason with each other. Try and persuade each other that we're right. Try to persuade maybe the other one that he he or she doesn't quite have the case exactly right, and come to a consensus, a decision on how the court is going to dispose of that case, how the court is going to decide that case. And it can get pretty heated around that table, the arguments that we have, the discussions that we have. But it's a very collegial court, too. It's really 9 friends, and as anybody who has friends knows, you don't always see things eye to eye with your friends, but that doesn't mean that you're not friendly to each other. And that's the way it works at the Supreme Court, too.
Let me ask you a few questions about the breadth and the kind of cases you hear. I know the Texas Supreme Court has heard several school finance cases, so some of the most complicated public policy questions about funding and financing and education across the whole state, all different kinds of school districts, small, large, and in between. On the other hand, there was a case a year or two ago about whether when the pound puts your dog or cat accidentally to euthanizes your pet, can you get emotional damage? How does one person get prepared on stuff that goes from dogs and cats to school finance and in between, and maybe a story or two about the most interesting cases you worked on in the past?
Well, you know, you're right. It is a very broad array of cases, and it's a broad array of cases in spite of the fact that we don't hear criminal cases. You mentioned that Texas is one of only 2 states that has 9 justices on its court. Texas, as you know, Judge Brister, is also one of only 2 states that has 2 highest courts, the Supreme Court and the Court of Criminal Appeals, which is across the hall from us in the Supreme Court building, also a 9-judge court. And the Court of Criminal Appeals is the highest court in Texas for criminal cases. The Supreme Court is the highest court in Texas for all other kinds of cases, and those are lawsuits of all different kinds, personal injury suits, breach of contract cases. It's the highest court for tax cases, for family law cases, which are cases that concern divorce and child custody and things like that. It's the highest court for juvenile cases, which even though juvenile law is basically boiled down, it's the criminal law as applied to minors. It's considered under the law to be civil law, so juvenile cases come to the Supreme Court. And as far as how one person can familiarize himself or herself with such a broad area of the law, that's why we need so much time to study these cases. We take them each very seriously and look deeply at each one before we decide any of those cases. And we've got the help of our law clerks and our staff attorneys to do that work too. Some of the more interesting cases that I've heard, I had when I was a trial judge, I tried a dog bite case. Then at the other end of the spectrum, I tried dog bite cases. I tried minor automobile wrecks, very minor automobile wrecks sometimes. And at the other end of the spectrum, there were heart-wrenching cases, cases where wrongful death cases where someone didn't survive an accident and claim that another party is at fault. And we've got to try that case and decide whether the defendant is at fault in that case. Big multi-million-dollar cases over contracts to build ports at the ship channel, over big oil and gas cases. Oil and gas is very hot in Texas right now, and we've got a lot of and whenever any part of the economy is hot, it gets hot legally too. We've got oil and gas law cases coming at us at a fast clip right now.
So tell us some about your philosophy of judging courts. A lot of people feel like, they read cases from the U.S. Supreme Court, and it looks like the Republicans are against Obamacare on the Obamacare case, and the Democrats are for it. And how does a judge separate your political views, and how do you personally approach cases that come before the court?
Well, I have a conservative judicial philosophy, and a lot of folks confuse that, and I think that's what you were hitting at, Judge Brister. It's a conservative judicial philosophy does not always mean a conservative political philosophy. I happen to be a political conservative too. I'm a conservative Republican, But my view on individual issues is not what guides me when I'm deciding a case. When I say that I have a conservative judicial philosophy, what I mean is that I try to stick close to the text of whatever I'm having to consider in making my decision, whether that's a contract or a statute or a rule or a regulation or a provision of the Constitution, whether it be the Texas Constitution or the United States Constitution. Sticking close to the text, looking to the plain language of the contract or the statute or the constitutional provision is how a judge can ensure himself or herself that they're applying the intent of the person who framed that, whatever that document is. And that's the document that is at issue in the case. And sticking close to the intent of the people who wrote the statute or ratified the Constitution or drafted that contract and came to an agreement on that contract is very important. Another thing that is important to a conservative judge is the idea that is stare decisis, which is a Latin term, which basically means it has been decided. And what that means is the cases that we've already decided inform us on how to decide cases of like issues when they come up later on down the road. And the reason that following rules that we've laid down in earlier cases is important is the law needs to be predictable. People need to be able to count on the idea that the law says what the law says. Otherwise, they won't be able to govern their own behavior, whether it's their behavior in their personal lives or in their business lives. And predictability in the law is one of the things that makes us such a great civilization.
Tell us some about your family and what it's like. I mean, where's your family? Where do you live? Where do judges on the Supreme Court live and work and that kind of thing?
Well, in my first year on the bench, my family, I've been married for 22 years. My wife is a school teacher. Her name is Susanna, and we've got 3 kids. Kathleen is 19, Rob is 16, and Gus is 13. And for the first year or so that I was on the Supreme Court, my family was back in Houston, so I was back and forth a lot. We didn't want to take the kids out of school. Susanna was in the middle of the school year when I got appointed. So for a while, this Supreme Court judge's family lived in 2 cities. But we have recently moved here to the Austin area. We just moved into a house down in Kyle, which is a city 20 miles south of Austin in Hays County, a very nice community. We're very happy to be there. My wife is a 12th grade English teacher at Hays High School. My son Rob is a junior at Hays High School, and Gus is in the 8th grade at Barton Middle School, which is right next door to the high school. Both of the schools are right across the street from our neighborhood. So it's a lovely place to live, and we're very happy to be there. My daughter, who's 19, is a sophomore at the University of Texas here in Austin, and she had just started her freshman year when the appointment came through. And when I called her and told her, guess what, honey, your dad and your mom and your 2 brothers are moving to Austin, she wasn't too happy about that.
Moving to Austin with you, right? Keep an eye on her. Right?
Yeah, but she has come around, and she realizes that the washer and dryer just moved a whole lot closer to her.
Tell us some about your community activities over the years. Can judges be involved in stuff in the community?
Oh, sure. I think it's important for judges to be involved in the community. We need to know what's going on in the community. We need to be close to the community. I have been my boys are in Boy Scouts, and my daughter was a Girl Scout, and scouting has been a big part, a very important part of our family life. I'm an Eagle Scout. My son is an Eagle Scout, and my youngest son is working his way that direction. Kathleen is a Gold Award winner. Scouting is very, very important to us, and I think it's a great way for kids to learn more about the outdoors, about being good citizens, about building good character. I have been involved. I'm a member of the board of directors of the Texas Historical Foundation. I've been a history buff for a long time, and getting to serve on that foundation has been very rewarding. I'm on the advisory board for an organization in Houston called Lifehouse. Lifehouse is a Christian home for young women, teenage girls mostly, who are not married but have found themselves pregnant, but have decided to keep their babies, and it's a place for them to live safely, to get prenatal care, to take parenting classes, and it is a life-affirming ministry, and it is one that I think has done a lot of good in the world, and I've been very happy to be a part of it.
We're about out of time. Just tell us a little bit about what it's like running for in a statewide office and what people can do to help you that are interested in helping in your campaign.
Sure. Well, it's a big effort statewide, as you know. It's a big state. It's 254 counties, and I try to cover it as much of it as I can. Folks can and I have enjoyed it. I've gotten to see parts of the state and meet people around the state who I would not otherwise have gotten to meet. And that's been a lot of fun, and it really brings home to me how important our job is on the Supreme Court when you get out and see the vast diversity that there is here in Texas. If folks want to help out with the campaign, the first stop they can make is at justicejeffbrown.com, and there's a place to sign up there to get onto our email list and to ask us for a bumper sticker. You can follow me on Twitter, @JudgeJeffBrown is my Twitter handle. And, mostly it's about just getting the word out. I'll say that another thing folks can do if they haven't done it already is register to vote. The election is 6 weeks from yesterday. It's 41 days away, and you've got to be registered to vote more than 30 days from the election. So go. I think it's votetexas.org. You can go and get and sign up to get a voter registration card, and I would be honored to have your vote.
Well, I think we're out of time. Thank you for your time, and I would urge the folks that have listened to this, please be sure to tell friends and family members to go to justicejeffbrown.com, watch this Google Hangout, and tell friends about it, and get out and vote, early voting or election day. Thank you.
Thanks, folks.